The world is watching. According to the Israeli Defense Force, 2 of their soldiers were severely wounded in northern Gaza as they continue to battle terrorists in Gaza City. Meantime, President Trump reiterating to the world that the war in the Middle East would have never happened had he been in office.
Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything, no money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
Joining me now to discuss, retired Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt. Also with us, foreign policy expert Harley Lippman. General Holt, do you agree with what the president just said there?
I absolutely agree. Every single thing we have seen, the start of this administration was with the disastrous summit with China at the table in Alaska, and then on into Kabul, and wars in Europe, and wars in North Africa, and wars in the Middle East. All deterrable. That's what they have in common. But they've also been escalating. And it's the exact same national security team that took their seats on Inauguration Day. That hasn't been changed. The president also said on the debate, not one general has been fired. Well, I would also ask, why hasn't one general resigned? If you're not in line with what this foreign policy is, where academics want the world to think that the United States Navy is a peer competitor to the Houthis, then why aren't things changing in D.C. and why aren't we respecting our constitutional oath? America's weak. This debate weakens us further, and we have the wolves at our door, and we're in some very, very serious times here, and not just from World War III, but also economically as we watch the BRICS consortium come together at its summit by the end of the summer.
It really was sad to watch. I don't think people understand just how precarious the situation is when we have the leader of the free world appearing to be so feeble and weak. And, you know, Harley, on the same day of the debate, the United States issued new sanctions on Iran for what Secretary of State Antony Blinken calls continued nuclear escalations. So what do you think about this? Joe Biden looking very weak, and then he's trying to be strong against Iran here?
Well, Blinken did say that the United States will not let Iran develop a nuclear weapon. Let's just pray and hope that he means it, because Iran will use it. They said they would. And their end goal is the United States. Our enemies always make it clear what they're going to do. We go into denial because we don't want to hear about it. But I think Trump made 2 great points. One is, he said about Gaza, let Israel finish the job. Israel's existence is threatened. The only way you can have peace and closure in the conflict is for there to be victory, which means Hamas has to be defeated. You have to surrender, and then you could rebuild Gaza with a kind of Marshall Plan. Second, President Trump talked about our allies in Europe vis-a-vis Russia. And yes, we have 2 big oceans that give us greater protection than Europe. And it's in Europe's backyard. And they have to pony up to pay their fair share of NATO. It's not fair that the United States pays such a large amount of this burden when these European countries see that Russia threatens them in their very backyard. The understanding is that these nations would pay at least 3% of their GDP for defense. They're between 1% and 2%. So they have to pony up. And if they really want to deter Russia, they really need to get to 4 to 5%. And so does the United States.
General Holt, we have about a minute left. Israel, it's fighting a war on multiple fronts, but Biden's approach is he seems to flip-flop, right? This week, the Pentagon warns Israel against any miscalculation along its northern border with Lebanon as fighting between the IDF and the Iran-aligned Hezbollah militia continues. What should the United States be doing instead in order to support Israel's war against Hamas? And also, how adversely does this affect even the war in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, when you have our leader looking so weak?
In every single case, they have got to cut the tether to their asphyxiation to domestic politics. They're more worried about Michigan electoral votes. And you can see it the way that we have daylight between us and our ally, Israel. And here we are saying, okay, but, you know, this could bring Iran into the war if you're going to have a war with Hezbollah. Israel has no choice. They're being attacked daily by Hezbollah. Nasrallah should be on the run here soon because Israel is going to go after them. And if Iran gets backed into the corner, then I'm worried that Harley might be incorrect about the safety of those oceans on our sides, because we have millions of fighting age men from those terror groups right here that could be activated by a desperate Iran where Israel's boot is on their neck. And that's my concern.
And you have a right to obviously be concerned. General Holt, Harley, Lippman, thank you both so much for joining us.
Take
Thank
care.
you.